Silent observer. The observation pod hung motionless in Earth's upper atmosphere, its quantum diffraction field bending light and electromagnetic signatures around its hull to maintain perfect invisibility. Inside, Scout Commander Vexlar of the Arcturian Collective adjusted his sensory appendages across the holographic interface, calibrating the array of sensors that monitored the third planet of this unremarkable yellow star. Vexlar had evaluated hundreds of worlds during his 3 centuries of service. Most proved unremarkable, primitive species still figuring out their place in the cosmos, barely capable of leaving their own atmospheres. Earth, officially designated Sol 3 in the collective archives, was supposed to be another routine reconnaissance mission. Computer, record preliminary assessment. Vexlar chirped, his vocal sac vibrating as he dictated. Sol 3 inhabitants demonstrate moderate technological progress, but remain confined primarily to planetary surface. Rudimentary space exploration, fractious political structures, and inefficient resource utilization suggest at least 2 centuries before consideration for collective contact protocols. The pod systems hummed softly as it processed the assessment. Vexlar had expected to complete his survey within 1 local planetary rotation and move on to the next system. The collective needed to catalog this galactic arm thoroughly before the hegemony expansion reached these sectors, and time was growing short. But at precisely 5:23 local time, the sensors detected an anomaly that changed everything. A section of dense forest canopy in what the locals called Northern Europe simply vanished. Not destroyed or blown away, but rather, it seemed to phase out of existence, revealing a complex underground structure beneath. Vexlar's primary optical receptors dilated as he enhanced the image. "Impossible," he muttered, manipulating the controls to verify the readings. "Computer, analyze camouflage technology." The computer's response was immediate. "Unknown parameters. Technology does not match any known collective or rival Imperial database entries." From the revealed opening, figures began to emerge. Humanoid, bipedal, but moving with a fluidity that immediately caught Vexlar's attention. Their coverings, what the locals would call uniforms, weren't merely clothing but integrated systems that seemed to function as extensions of the biological entities wearing them. "Enhance and analyze," Vexlar commanded, his customary professional detachment faltering as the pod systems zoomed in on the human activity below. The humans moved in formations that defied standard tactical analysis. They didn't proceed in rigid patterns like hegemony forces or in the flowing organic arrangements of collective units. Instead, they seemed to adapt continuously to their environment, each individual simultaneously acting as both autonomous agent and synchronized component of a greater whole. "Computer, classify training exercise type and projected purpose," Vexlar requested. After a brief pause, "Insufficient reference data. Behavior suggests extreme environment adaptation training, but methodology exceeds known military doctrine parameters." The first group carried equipment that initially appeared to be standard battlefield support gear, but as Vexlar watched, each piece transformed and reconfigured for multiple functions. A communications array doubled as an environmental scanner, which then reconfigured into what appeared to be a medical diagnostic station, all within moments and without apparent external control systems. A second group moved in what Vexlar could only describe as calculated chaos. Their movements created and dissolved tactical formations with organic complexity, each soldier functioning both independently and as part of an integrated whole. They didn't secure their perimeter. They became their perimeter, a living, breathing defensive system that constantly adapted to changing conditions. The most fascinating group was smaller, less heavily equipped. Yet they radiated an intensity that made Vexlar's neural clusters pulse with electrical tension. These appeared to be command units, but unlike any Vexlar had ever observed. Their equipment was minimal, suggesting they carried something far more valuable: cognitive and strategic capabilities that transcended physical limitations. "Computer, analyze neural activity patterns if detectable," Vexlar ordered. Warning: unprecedented activity detected. Human neural patterns show synchronization rates exceeding collective hive mind efficiency by approximately 17.3%, despite lacking direct neural interface technology. That was impossible. The collective had spent millennia perfecting their neural interface technology. The idea that unaugmented biological entities could achieve comparable synchronization through training alone was absurd. Yet the evidence unfolded before him. Without warning, the mountain slope adjacent to the training area collapsed. 15,000 tons of rock and soil cascaded toward the human unit, an apparent deliberate triggering of a landslide. As part of their exercise, Vexillar's appendages trembled as he recorded what followed. The humans didn't scatter or panic. Their movements became even more precise, more calculated. Some deployed equipment that stabilized the ground beneath them. Others used the momentum of the landslide itself to reposition to more advantageous locations. One soldier was completely buried under the debris. In any other species, this would mean certain death. Instead, Vexillar's sensors detected steady life signs, and most disturbing of all, continued tactical communications from beneath tons of earth and stone. Computer: calculate survival probability based on known biological resilience factors. Calculating. Probability undefined. Observed resilience exceeds parameter limitations of prediction models. 12 minutes later, the buried soldier emerged from a different location, having somehow navigated through the compressed earth using the landslide itself as a transportation mechanism. The equipment which had been damaged was rapidly stripped, reconfigured, and repurposed. Communication devices were rebuilt using components from multiple systems. They're not just surviving, Vexillar muttered, his professional detachment now completely abandoned. They're using the disaster as a resource. Over the next 48 hours, Vexillar observed as the human unit was subjected to what appeared to be a systematically escalating series of challenges: sleep deprivation, extreme temperature fluctuations, sensory bombardment, simulated equipment failures, resource scarcity. With each new challenge, the humans should have degraded in performance. Instead, they adapted. Their problem-solving capabilities didn't just maintain, they improved. Their coordination became more efficient, not less. Their innovation accelerated rather than diminished. When faced with a simulated communication breakdown, they developed an entirely new communication system using micromovements and environmental manipulation that was nearly impossible for Vexillar's advanced systems to detect, much less decode. When their primary equipment failed, they didn't retreat. They transformed their environment into tools and weapons with a creativity that suggested their true advantage wasn't technology but imagination. Most terrifying of all was their response to psychological pressure. Where most species would break, these humans seemed to forge their consciousness into something stronger, more focused, more dangerous. Their neural patterns showed evidence of real-time adaptation, creating new pathways that transformed stress into computational advantage. Computer, Vexillar finally said, his voice barely audible even to the sensitive microphones of the pod. Recalculate threat assessment of Sol 3 inhabitants. The computer's response was immediate and chilling, based on observed adaptability, innovation rate, and psychological resilience. Classification upgraded to potential Class A evolutionary threat. Recommended protocol: non-interference with accelerated monitoring. Vexillar stared at the recommendation for several long moments. Class A designation was reserved for species with the potential to become galactic-level threats, species that could potentially challenge even the collective or hegemony, despite technological disadvantages. In 3 centuries of scouting, Vexillar had never submitted such a classification. He knew his report would face skepticism from the collective council. Many would dismiss his findings as exaggeration or misinterpretation. But they hadn't seen what he had seen. They hadn't witnessed humans transforming limitations into advantages, disasters into opportunities, failures into evolution. Computer, prepare emergency transmission to collective high command. Vexillar said, his decision made. Priority Alpha. Begin with the following. I have encountered a species that does not view the impossible as a limitation, but merely as a temporary condition to be overcome. Recommend immediate implementation of non-interference protocols. As the transmission prepared, Vexillar watched the human unit below gathering for what appeared to be a debriefing. They looked exhausted, battered, pushed beyond what should have been their breaking point. Yet they were smiling. The warning. The Grand Hall of the Arcturian Collective buzzed with agitated communication waves as council members processed Vexillar's report. Massive crystalline structures hovering above the central platform displayed footage from Earth, the human training exercises, their technological systems, their inexplicable adaptability. This is preposterous, declared Council Elder Myrax, her neural crest flaring with skepticism. Scout Commander Vexillar has spent too much time in isolation. His judgment is clearly compromised. Vexillar stood motionless before the council, all four of his sensory appendages retracted in the formal posture of absolute certainty. With respect, Elder, the evidence has been verified by 3 independent analysis systems. The humans demonstrate capabilities that defy our understanding of evolutionary development. They are barely capable of reaching their own moon, countered Elder Zorval, his voice resonating through the collective neural network. Their technology is primitive, their social structures chaotic, their understanding of cosmic principles rudimentary at best. That is precisely what makes them dangerous, Vexillar insisted. Their technological limitations have not prevented their advancement. They have accelerated it. He gestured toward the displays, which now showed humans improvising solutions to equipment failures during the training exercises. Observe how they respond to limitations. Where our species would seek technological solutions, they create biological and psychological adaptations. They don't overcome obstacles. They transform themselves to make the obstacles irrelevant. The council chamber quieted as footage played of a human soldier, severely injured during a training accident, implementing self-medical procedures while simultaneously continuing to function in a tactical capacity. Our medical technology is 500 cycles ahead of theirs, Vexillar continued. Yet their biological resilience and adaptive capacity often achieve comparable results through sheer determination and innovative thinking. They have turned their evolutionary limitations into advantages. Senior Tactical Advisor Angstver stepped forward, his analytical mind already processing implications. If Scout Commander Vexillar is correct, these humans could represent a fundamental challenge to our understanding of species development. We classify advancement based on technological progression, but these humans suggest another path, one based on adaptive biological and psychological evolution. Even if true, they remain confined to their world. Elder Myrax insisted. The threat is theoretical at best, distant at worst. Vexillar activated another data stream, showing human space exploration efforts. They have achieved more with their primitive technology than any species at comparable development stages in our records. They don't wait for perfect solutions. They implement partial ones and improve through iteration. He highlighted their communications satellites, space stations, and planetary rovers. Most critically, they learn exponentially. Each advance builds upon previous ones with accelerating returns. Their rate of development has increased by 317% in just the last century. The display shifted to show human warfare. The images were primitive compared to collective capabilities, yet disturbing in their intensity and innovation. Humans fighting in environments where no life should survive, adapting to conditions that would break most species, creating weapons from the most limited resources. They are warriors by nature, Vexillar concluded, not merely physically, but cognitively. They weaponize their thinking. Where we see problems, they see challenges. Where we see limitations, they see opportunities. Their greatest wars have produced their greatest innovations. Science Director Velmora, previously silent, finally spoke. What precisely are you suggesting, Scout Commander? That we classify a pre-interstellar species as a Class A threat? It would be unprecedented. I am suggesting Vexler said carefully, that we recognize a species that does not acknowledge impossibility as a constraint. Our models predict they will achieve interstellar capability within 200 cycles. But those models assume linear progression. If I am correct about their exponential learning and adaptation, that timeline could be reduced to 50 cycles or less. The council chamber erupted in conflicting communication waves. The suggestion was radical: to classify a technologically limited species as a potential galactic threat based not on their current capabilities but on their adaptive potential. High Commander Thexlor, who had remained silent throughout the debate, finally raised a limb for attention. The chamber immediately quieted. "Show us the psychological analysis," he ordered. Vexlar complied, displaying the most disturbing data he had collected: neural pattern analyses of humans under extreme stress conditions. "As you can see," he explained, "where most species show degradation under sustained pressure, humans show evidence of neural pathway reconfiguration. They don't merely endure stress, they transform it into enhanced cognitive function. They call it stress inoculation and deliberately expose themselves to failure conditions to strengthen their response capacities." High Commander Thexlor studied the data carefully before addressing the council. "In 9,000 cycles of collective history, we have encountered 17 species that achieved interstellar capability. Of those, 15 developed along predictable technological paths. 2 developed in ways we failed to anticipate, resulting in the wars of ascension and millions of lives lost." The chamber grew solemn at the reference to the darkest period in collective history. "If Scout Commander Vexlar is even partially correct," Vexlar continued, "humans represent a third path, one based not on technological superiority or biological advantage, but on adaptive potential that transcends both. Their limitations have not constrained them, they have forged them into strengths." He turned to face the council directly. "I support the Class A designation and recommend immediate implementation of non-interference protocols. We will observe, we will learn, but we will not engage until we fully understand what we are facing." Elder Myrax's neural crest flattened in submission. "The evidence is concerning, but classifying them alongside the Vothar Dominion and Xerxes consciousness seems excessive. The difference," Vexlar countered, "is that we recognize the Vothar and Xerxes threats too late. Their technological advancement had already matched our own. With humans, we have the opportunity to understand a fundamentally different kind of threat before it fully manifests." The final evidence Vexlar presented was the most compelling: footage of human creative problem-solving. Artists creating beauty from chaos, scientists turning failures into discoveries, explorers transforming hostile environments into habitats. "They are more than warriors," Vexlar concluded. "They are adapters, innovators, dreamers. They don't accept the universe as it is. They reimagine it as it could be, then force reality to conform to their vision. I believe this makes them the most dangerous species we have ever encountered, and potentially, if approached correctly, the most valuable allies we could ever find." After 3 cycles of deliberation, the Arcturian collective reached its decision. Earth was classified as a potential Class A evolutionary threat, with strict non-interference protocols implemented. No contact was to be initiated until humans either self-destructed or achieved interstellar capability on their own terms. In his private quarters, Vexlar recorded his final entry on the Earth assessment. "The humans have a concept they call the impossible. Unlike us, they do not view it as an absolute limitation, but as a temporary condition they haven't solved yet. This single cognitive difference may ultimately determine the future of galactic civilization." He added after a moment's reflection, "They also have a saying, 'What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.' Most species in the galaxy would consider this a biological absurdity. Humans have made it their evolutionary strategy. May the collective be wise enough to understand the implications before it is too late." The observation pod was withdrawn from Earth orbit, replaced by automated long-range monitoring systems. The collective would watch, would learn, would prepare. And somewhere below, unaware of the cosmic significance they had just been assigned, humans continued to train, to adapt, to overcome, transforming their limitations into their greatest strength, one impossible challenge at a time.